everybody! Today on Stitching with Civarella, I'm going to go over the supplies that you need to cross stitch as well as the supplies that make it a little bit easier but that aren't really necessary to get the project done. While talking about this, I'm going to be using Wild Violet Cross Stitch's Reddit Stitch Along pattern again. There will be a link in the description for you to pick it up if you're interested. But let's get started. Honestly, when it comes to cross stitching, you just need 5 things. You need a pattern, you need a needle, floss, fabric, and scissors, or some sort of cutting instrument. If you want to use a Bowie knife, go for it. You do you, boo. But you need something to trim up your thread with. Now, I am filming this during quarantine because we have COVID going on, so I can't take you to a store and shop for stuff. However, luckily for me and for all of you, we all know that cross-stitching and cross-stitch stash collecting are 2 completely different hobbies. So I pretty much have my own Joann's right in this room. So the first thing that we need is pattern, which we have here. You can find these if you want to buy a complete kit, which has everything you need in it, minus a cutting instrument. Everything will be in there, you're good to go, or you can shop online. Etsy has tons of them. You can buy cross-stitching books, cross-stitching leaflets, you can make up your own pattern. Anything you want to do to get your own pattern going, that gets us started. Next, you'll need to buy a needle, and it's up to you what kind you want to buy, what brand, anything like that. If you buy a kit, more than likely it will come with a needle. I typically stick with DMC needles, so they come in packs like this. With cross-stitching, you'll typically use a round end or a blunt end needle, and it'll tell you at the top what it is. So you can see that this Tapestry 22 needle has a round end. It's kind of getting in there. And these beading needles, they have a sharp end, and it'll tell you at the top. Kind of. Okay, cross-stitching, because typically we're going through holes in the fabric anyway, we don't need something sharp to stab our way through. Also, it makes it so that you don't bleed all over everything when you accidentally stab yourself. You can also use ball-tipped needles, which I personally really like. And here's one of the ball-tipped needles. You can see that it's got a kind of an indent down here, and that's where the ball is. Now we're going to need something to stitch on, so we need our fabric. Now, if you're watching this video, chances are you are new to cross stitch. So you're going to be working mostly with Aida. And Aida is the fabric that you see that has the big holes and squares in it. Okay? So there's different sizes, different colors. You can dye your own Aida. That'll be another video. You can get weird with it. Okay? The majority of patterns are done on 14 count Aida. So what that means is that there are 14 squares per inch. That's all that means. It means you're going to get 14 stitches in an inch. Okay, so this is 14 count, there's 11 count, 18 count, 16 count, which I am out of, which is driving me crazy. And then there's also linen, which we will get into later. But linen looks like this, and instead of just doing the squares, you have to count more, and we'll do a video on it. I've been stitching since I was 13, which is 20 years ago, and I've made, I think, 3 projects on linen because it just intimidates me. But we'll get there eventually. That's a different video. So if you go shopping for your fabric, you're going to look for Aida, and I would suggest 14 to 16 count. 14 is a nice size. It's kind of the middle ground. It's the typical. It's what everybody uses. 18 count is 18 stitches to the inch, which means your stitches are going to be smaller, your holes are going to be smaller, your end piece is going to be smaller than if you do it on 14 count. It'll be a little bit bigger. I would recommend starting on 14. The holes are big enough for you to see. It's easy enough to work with. I would suggest starting with 14. Next, we need to buy our floss. So what we do is we look in the pattern and we're going to look for our color key, our color chart, our floss listing, whatever the designer has it listed as. And we are going to buy everything that is listed in this column. Now you'll see here that it says DMC numbers. That means that this pattern is keyed for DMC brand colored floss. They make a bunch of different kinds. There's Anchor, J&P coats, there's overdyed flosses, there's a bunch of different stuff. DMC is going to be your typical color. Assume that if they don't specify what it is, it's more than likely DMC. You'll be able to tell DMC floss because it's going to look like this. It's going to have a DMC logo, and then it'll have a barcode, and your number is going to be at the bottom of the skein. You can see here this is 310, which is black. But that is what a skein of floss is. So if something says you're going to use a skein of floss, it means you are going to use this entire thing. Now, like I said, we're in quarantine, so I can't go to Joann's, but luckily I've got my own Joann's stash of floss right here. So it'll be kind of set up close to the same way as it will be when you go to Michael's, Joann's, Hobby Lobby, your local needlework store, basically your thread supplier of choice. So when you go to pick out your floss, it will look like this with all of these numbers, okay? Except for when you actually go, it's not going to be stacked up in this little neat thing. It's going to be a whole aisle, half an aisle full of floss, okay? So I'll pull it out so that hopefully you can kind of see a little bit better. What you're going to do is each of these numbers corresponds to a color. So you can see here, number 113 is this blue guy. And you can see that his number is upside down for some reason. His number 113, okay? So it's pretty easy to pick out your floss. The gamble is whether the store is going to have all the floss you need or not. So here's our list. So when you go, just start at the top and work your way down because they will be in numerical order, okay? So here I would look for number 156. I'm going to find it. 156, of course, is one of the new colors. This came out in 1999. They've had a lot more colors since then. So 156, I wouldn't be able to find it. So let's see, 168, we'll go to 310, okay? So 310, I'm gonna go here, 310, there it is, okay? So, kind of blurry, kind of hard, but that is how you will shop for your floss. Just shop the list of numbers you've got, and pull each floss as you get it. Last but not least, you're going to need something to cut your thread with and cut your fabric with. I recommend actually buying a pair of fabric scissors I sew too, sorry. I recommend buying a pair of actual fabric scissors to cut through your Aida. Aida can be a little tough to cut through, and you may need to cut through it, especially if you buy a big roll, and maybe you have a small pattern that you don't need all that fabric for. So I would invest in a pair of actual sewing scissors for that piece. As for cutting your thread and stuff like that, you can't go wrong with the stork scissors. I always have loved these. They're a typical sewing snip. You know, whatever you like. I like scissors. So, you know, whatever works for you. Some will come with a fancy pouch. That's how you know they're a little bit on the pricier side, a little nicer scissor. These are kind of cool. You can buy them at any craft store. They fold up, but I don't quite remember how they do it like this. These fold up, and they are TSA approved, so you can take them on an airplane with you because they fold up into that tiny thing. So I really like these. But a pair of Fiskars, a pair of baby nail clippers, one of those rolly wheel cutters. I don't have one of those. Not a rotary, but you know, like the necklacey ones. I don't have one of those, but you can use those. You can use anything. In a pinch, I have used a seatbelt cutter to get my floss cut. Okay, if it's sharp, if it cuts, it'll work. So those are the things you absolutely need in order to cross stitch. The rest of the stuff is just fun and or helpful. I personally like a case to keep my newest or latest project in. I have this guy, and he just unhooks, and then I can stitch. Just helps make sure you keep everything together, helps make sure that there's no accidents from the pets. or the small children. So I keep everything in a box. And it's nice, it's lightweight, it's travel. I can just chuck it in a backpack and take it with me. Another thing that you don't need to have but that really helps is a hoop or a Q-snap. So this you would put over your Ada and it holds it taut for you. And it's easier to get the needle and the thread in and out. You can also use a Q-snap, which looks like this. It's basically just plastic, I don't know, PVC pipe. And you layer it on here, and then you put it on here, and it holds it nice and tight for you. This other fabric piece that I have on here is called a grime guard. I'm working on an 18-page piece, which is why I have one this big. And I find that because it's so big, because I hold it so much, because it's taking me my entire life to do it, I get hand oils and stuff on it. The grime guard helps prevent that. So I'm holding on to the grime guard. I'm not holding on to the fabric because you can wrap the fabric around in here. Grime guard, not necessary, but useful. Q-snap, I would throw it into a necessary because I can't stitch freehand, I think is what it's called, where you don't have any hoop, you just stitch. But some people can, and those people are amazing. I can't do that. So a hoop, a Q-snap, anything like that. Q-snaps come in all different sizes. Hoops also come in a lot of different sizes. Just depends on what you prefer. Hoops can be plastic, metal, or wood. I find that metal tends to work the best if you can find them. Another thing that I would highly recommend is a highlighter and or a pen. Highlighter, if you're the type of person that likes to print out your charts and highlight them as you go through, that's what I do, so I know what I've done. And the pen to help mark the center of the thing for me, as well as if I notice anything that's like off or I want to change something a little bit, it's easier to just kind of go in and do it that way. Another thing that comes in handy is a light. This is an Ott light that I took on a cross-stitching retreat and didn't know that I needed to put batteries in it, and I didn't have a screwdriver, so it was useless to me at that point. Still haven't put batteries in it. It's just additional light. You need good light if you're going to stitch, and these really help. They come in a bunch, from sit it on your desk to clip it on your Q-snap or your hoop to giant lamps. Just depends on what you need, what you're looking for. Again, not necessary, but something nice to have, especially if you just don't have good lighting in the area that you're stitching in. So this is a detailer. These are useful, but can be kind of hard to use. So these are used for when you play thread chicken and you end up with a tiny bit of thread that you can't really maneuver to secure to end the thread. What you would do is you would loop this underneath those stitches, stick your thread through it so that it's in there, and then you pull this back out and it pulls the thread through the strings to secure it. This one's kind of bent because I've used it a lot. I like to play thread chicken. So maybe I just need another one. That's why this one's not working as well anymore. But yeah, that's what a detailer is. And then we'll get to kind of the fun stuff. So needle minders, everybody loves them. I made this one. You know, just magnets. Stick your needles on there so that they don't go anywhere. You don't lose them in bed and your husband finds it later on at 2 in the morning. You know, they're fun, they're collectible, they're decorative, they're easy to make. So yeah, needle minders, everybody loves them. Something fun. Another fun thing is scissor fobs. So again, just kind of like, you know, little hangy decoration for your scissor. Yeah. And then the last thing that I'll show you is some sort of ort collector. So an ort is the little tiny piece of string that you cut off and you're done with. You can't really do any more stitching with. They will get all over your house. So if you have somewhere to just kind of throw them, I have this lovely cute little ort collector that my mom made me. And so I keep all mine in there. And then I dump them into a lamp, and I have a lamp that's full of cross-stitching thread. There's plenty of other stuff too. There's beads, there's charms, there's different threads that you can use, different techniques you can use. There's all kinds of stuff. However, since this video series is based for beginners, we're not going to go into that stuff. If you're beginning cross stitch, you will need those first 5 things I talked about, and I would strongly suggest a hoop or a Q-snap and a highlighter. Other than that, everything else is just kind of extra and just fun. But those are the things I would really strongly suggest. So we had our pattern picked out and we learned how to read it last video. This video we shopped for our supplies, and then next video we're going to get everything ready and we're going to start stitching. So thanks for hanging with me, and I hope that you found this video useful. Bye!